Starting, okay. Just for everybody in the room, the meeting is being recorded, so just to let you know. Clean. Here's the announcement. Keep it clean.
Recording it so we can post it online for anyone who catches this later. So, so thanks to everybody online who's here joining us and in person. So my name is Janine Rosa. I'm Senior Air Quality Specialist in the Air Quality Management Division here at the Health District. And so we're talking about our implementation for our new regulations, which goes into effect January 1st. A little background. So chapter 030, that's kind of our, this is the requirements for air pollution control, air quality permitting for any sources with regulated air pollutants in Washoe County used to protect public health and welfare. And this establishes minimum thresholds for our permitting and control requirements, any exemptions. And so also establishes application monitoring, reporting, record keeping, and testing requirements. So just a little background. And so things we're going to cover today: permit to construct and permit to operate, best systems of control, and stationary source application requirements. So permit to operate. So we're following along essentially in the new regulation. So this is available online. So this is section 030.020. So this is a document that's issued by us that allows, with or without restrictions, the operation of a new source of air pollution or for the modification of an existing source. Right, or permit to construct. I'm going to go backwards. My apologies. So I think my clicker worked too fast. So permit to construct, you want to start with a permit to construct. So if this is a document you want to get in touch with us as soon as you start having the conversation with your business, with your company, when you start talking about bringing new equipment into Washoe County, it's worth a phone call to us, even if you don't know exactly what those units are yet. Start the conversation early because there's a process to how long it takes you to put an application together, complete application, and then how long it takes us to process that application to get you the permit to construct prior to you constructing those emissions units. So some of you may be familiar with the term authority to construct. We're now moving to the term permit to construct because this really is a permit that allows the construction of emissions, but it also allows the operation of those units for up to 12 months after initial startup. So, so please start that conversation early with us. The permit to construct after it's issued is valid until, I guess I should say it expires if you do not commence construction within 18 months of the issuance date. So if for some reason that project is delayed, that or permit to construct will expire. If you start construction and then cease construction for 18 months or longer, it will expire at that point. And so then if the project then is going to go into effect, you will have to reapply. Often what happens is things change. If a project has been stopped for any reason, usually a specific reason, some things may change with those emissions units. So 1 year after initial startup, if a complete application for a permit to operate has not been submitted, then it will expire. Or when you submit that application for that permit to operate, it will expire then. So upon issuance of a permit to operate. So this is a new part of the process. Currently, we do authority to construct. Then once everything's operating, as was stated in the application, our inspection is completed and they say, okay, yep, good to go. There is a fee associated, and then your permit to operate is issued. What will happen at this point in time is you're up and operational, you'll apply for that permit to operate. Your application will probably be very, very similar to the permit to construct application. It should be the same, maybe some minor updates to maybe model numbers weren't available, so you substituted a different model number or a serial number that you didn't know because you didn't quite have that yet. Now's the time to update those types of information. Then we go to the permit to operate. So This again is the same sort of thing, allowing with or without restrictions, the operation of new sources or modifications to existing sources. This expires and is invalid after 5 years. The expired permit to operate cannot be reauthorized or reinstated. A new application would be required at that point. And it has to be renewed every 5 years by filing in a timely and complete application along with appropriate fee. We'll talk about timely and complete a little bit later. The timely filing is very important. That timely filing of application provides the applicant a permit shield. Essentially, this protects the applicant for operation by getting that timely filing, and if we're late getting the permit out. Talk about that a little bit later as well. I don't know, I was going to say something else about the permit to operate. So the renewal every 5 years, that's also new. So every year, so anyone who has an existing permit, what you're accustomed to is you have your inspection that sort of lines up with when your throughput is due. You submit your throughput to us, a fee is based on that, and then we reissue essentially the same permit you have had for some, in some cases, decades. So now what we're requesting is, because what we found is a lot of these permits that have been in place for decades don't have any regulation updates, don't have updates to a full facility-wide potential to emit. So we're missing the big picture of a facility. So every 5 years, a renewal application will be submitted. This should be a pretty seamless process. So if you've kept up on all of your modifications throughout that 5 years, you should essentially be filing at that point saying, okay, nothing's changed, and basically we'll be reissuing a permit for another 5 years. But there will be an application for that part of the process now. The applicability for minor sources. So these are the air pollutants, which are regulated within Washoe County. And again, I just want to reiterate, I think there was a little thing at the bottom of one of the slides, but this is, we're specifically talking minor sources. So minor, synthetic, minor, we're not in major source or PSD categories. So criteria pollutants. So these determine the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So PM10, 2.5, SO2, NO2, ozone, which is determined by precursors, VOC and NOx, CO and lead. The regulated minor source pollutants are the criteria, all those criteria pollutants plus hydrogen sulfide and total reduced sulfur compounds. And regulated air pollutants are the criteria pollutants and the precursors plus hazardous air pollutants, which are regulated under Section 112B of the Clean Air Act. There's a list of still 187 hazardous air pollutants defined by the EPA that we also regulate. So thresholds. So any source that has the potential to emit it's any of these pollutants at this quantity is required to have an operating permit within Washoe County. So you need to calculate your potential to emit. Your potential to emit is the maximum capacity of the source to emit a pollutant under its physical and operational design. This includes all insignificant equipment. I'll go over that list a little bit later. This is all determined pre-control at 8,760 hours a year. Hours there are in a year. If the entire source has a PTE equal to or greater than and is not a major source as defined in our major source sections of the regulation, then you're required to apply for a minor source permit. We can get into more detail on potential to emit if anybody needs assistance. If you are considered a small business, we are here to help you. Call us, set up an appointment. We can help you through that process. There's a lot of guidance available. Consultants can also help you with this if that's in the realm of your capacity to get a consultant to help you with this. Yeah, and then the other thing on this, and so if the operational design and controls are enforceable, they may be able to be used as part of your PTE. So as long as you can demonstrate that. So there's a lot of nuance to potential to emit. So without getting into the weeds, this is kind of a highlight of what's in the regulation. Okay. Then some facilities may be subject to what we're calling best systems of control. So it's the lowest emission limitation that a source is capable of. The application of control technology that is reasonably available, considering technological and economical feasibility, considering the following things. So energy, environmental impacts and costs, cost effectiveness, control technology used by similar sources, technical feasibility. So this is applied when each pollutant at a new or existing source with a source-wide PTE increase of these thresholds in the table, unless they're subject to factor layer under major source provisions. So I'm a facility and I have a current potential to emit of 6, and I am adding of PM 2.5, say, and I'm adding 5 tons per year of PM 2.5. So that puts me at 11 tons per year, but my increase was not 10 tons per year. So I'm not subject to BSC quite yet. So it's if that increase in itself put you over that threshold. The next part of this is this would be applied to each new emissions unit and each existing emissions unit if it has an impact on the existing emissions unit. So there's some changes you would be able to make that won't have an impact on what you have existed. You add new equipment and this completely does not change the capacity of what exists. So then BSC would only be applied to your new equipment if you meet these thresholds with just this new equipment. If what you're doing also increases the capacity of the rest of the facility, that BSC would be applied to all emission units that emit whatever pollutant it is that you're having to control for. So exemptions and insignificant sources. So in section 030020B, we have categorical exemptions. So these are just outright exemptions. 1 through 3, that was in our old regulations. We have added 4 and 5. So 4 is emergency backup generators for residential locations. We have a couple of those that have some generators at their homes. So those would no longer require permits. And then tobacco, cannabis, smoking rooms and areas. That's not in our realm of we do here in air quality. So let's see. Insignificant sources. So there's a whole big list in this section of the reg for insignificant sources. So we've done a better job of clearly defining what will no longer in its own right need a permit. It still needs to be included in the potential to emit for a facility which would otherwise require a permit. However, it won't be included in any permitting conditions. If it's like I have an engine that's 500 horsepower, that in and of itself does not require a permit. However, it does not exempt you from any federal regulations. So for example, engines have certain regulations. So there's 4I, 4Z, 4J. So you're still required to abide by the federal requirements for those engines, but you don't necessarily need an operating permit with us. So engines less than 600 horsepower, any HVAC or fuel burning equipment, natural gas, for use for comfort heat or safety of property, with an individual max heat input rating of less than 1 million BTUs per hour will no longer be required a permit. Commercial food preparation, this doesn't include solid fuel burning, so anything that uses wood or coal to require pizza ovens, that sort of thing, they still need a permit. Commercial food prep does not. And these are things that we have in the past permitted. So historically have had permits. We have a list that we've generated from what we understand of current permits. We are sending out letters this month to those facilities, letting them know that they will no longer need a permit under our new regulation, and we're going to be closing their source, which consists. If a source consists solely of insignificant activities, however, it's over 5 tons per year in potential to emit for any of the criteria effluents or any of the regulated air pollutants, we will have discretion as to they may or may not need a permit. So you could have, you know, an entire warehouse maybe that has 6 boilers, but they're all 999,000 BTUs per hour. That's a conversation, and that will be made on a case-by-case basis. A little bit of homework, like Josh had from his first presentation too here. So review this section. You can obtain a copy, like I said, from our website. Contact us early with questions. You know, when you have equipment hitting the ground is not the time to call us and say, hey, I need to modify my permit. Email us aqmdpermitting@nnph.org. No, that's kind of hard to read. Or call us and ask for permitting. 74-7200 is the main line. Ask for permitting. One of us will answer your call. Or leave a voicemail. Please leave a voicemail if you call us. And you can sign up for any updates by subscribing to our email list. So that's on the homepage of our website also. This is a great way to hear about workshops or any upcoming changes, or we're going to start implementing office hours next year. So any updates you'll hear about through that email list. Okay. So application. So the permit application. So as a facility that meets the threshold, you have a duty to apply for a permit to operate. So as it states in our reg, no person shall commence with construction, modification, or operation of a source except in compliance with the permit to construct or permit to operate that authorizes such activity. So that's an initial application. A renewal application every 5 years. So there's some dates we're going to throw out at you here, but I think we've broken it down pretty well. So you want to get this in at least 180 days prior to the expiration, but no sooner than 270 days. So this is timely is in between those two times. So timely is within 270 and 180 days. That gives you that permit shield. Failure to submit an application for renewal, you lose authority to operate upon the expiration, and then you're treated as a new minor source and be subject to all the requirements from the section in the reg for new permits. Okay, so here we've broken this down. This table will be posted on the website. So all of our permits expire at the end of a month. So if your permit expires at the end of, so this is for everybody getting permits next year. If your expiration date is January 2026, the earliest you can apply is May 6th next year. The latest you want to get that in is August 4th of next year. However, part of that timeline is the completeness of that application. We have 30 days to determine completeness. If you are confident that you have checked all the boxes, our applications have a checklist of all the things you should be submitting if it applies to you. The regulation states very clearly, there's a whole section on what is required in your application. If you have full 100% confidence that you have everything you need, then by all means, submit it in 180 days. But if we do that completeness review and determine on day 29 that that is not complete, we send it back to you, but that pushes you back. So now your timeline, now you're in jeopardy of not having a permit shield because it's not a complete application. So that time gets tacked on. So we have 180 days to issue that permit. So that's why the 180 days prior to the expiration. So really 210 days is kind of the sweet spot there to give you a little, make sure you have the completeness review done and can get that turned around. Now the completeness review is really administrative. Are all the required contacts filled out on the application? Is there a flow diagram, process description, a spreadsheet with potential to emit, a full emissions inventory? So it's just administrative. We're not getting into the technical review at this point. So it's just at a glance, are these things here? They may be right, they may be wrong. We won't know that until we get to the technical review. But are they in the package? Okay, so this is directly from the regulation, expiring every 5 years. So we had to make some decisions on how we were going to determine this rollout, so everybody's not applying at the same 5-year interval. So we're rolling it out. So over the next 6 years. So this is how we're doing that. So anyone who attended the first workshop, this is just reiterating this. So anyone with a permit ending in 0 or 5, you'll expire in 2026, 1 or 6, and so on. So that's how we've broken it out to sort of stagger it over the course of the next 6 years. And so we will be updating those. So as your reissued permits next year, you'll see these new expiration dates. So you can look at your permit currently and see what's my permit number, what's my expiration date, kind of. Okay, so 0, that one's going to still be the following year, but that means that this one will need to start thinking about submitting their application between May and August next year. Said, okay. So, expiration will establish the time frame for submitting. Okay, so annual maintenance and emissions fees will be assessed on the first day of the month of the expiration. So this is separate from anything you submit now. It's separate from your application. It's just a fee that's invoiced at the beginning of the month and then is due 30 days after that. So what Josh really talked about at the first workshop, which is still online, so you can review that if you missed that. Again, this is really important, and it's new to everybody, so we really want to kind of make sure that everybody is clear on this. This will also be available in PDF as well online. Just again, breaking down those time periods for what timely permit is. Example again. So get on the homework. So a copy of the permit, locate your permit number, and then you can use that spreadsheet we had up there to figure out what your new expiration date will be. You can figure out what days that you can submit your application. We will be sending reminders also to let you know. So I think at 300 and almost 300 days out and 270 days out, just letting you know. The processing. So like I said, we have 180 days to issue a permit to construct or a permit to operate. We do the application completeness. So this is the administrative completeness I talked about. Within 30 days, if you don't hear from us within that 30 days, assume it's complete. 180 days begins once we've deemed it complete. So that's where I said maybe 210 days is kind of really the a comfortable area so that you know that you've submitted everything you need to. Technical review. So when one of the permit writers actually gets to writing the permit, they do a technical review. So they're going to go through and really look in detail at everything. They're going to do their own spreadsheet with emissions calculations and everything. And during that time, there may be pauses because they may need further information. So they may have questions about emission factors used. They may have questions about the process isn't quite, they're not quite understanding it. They need some more detail, whatever the case may be. So they will contact you. That pauses that 180 days. So there is an example in the regulation in 030-200.c2b. Essentially, if I contact you on day 90 and it takes you 10 days to get back to me, then that 10 days does not count toward those 180 days of my processing time. So we pause our timeline until you get back to us. So it's really, as quickly as you can get back to us, it's way more beneficial. It gets you your permit faster. Honestly, it stays fresher in our minds as well, as opposed to putting something to the side and then 60 days later we get something back. Like, oh, now we have to get back into this all over again. So it's really helpful all around. So the permit shield says, so this is where, so timely and complete application, the source is protected if the AQMD is late on renewing or issuing the permit. So if for our own workload, we're late and we get it out on day 240, if you had a complete and timely application in, even though your permit expired, you're protected under that shield because it was our end that we didn't issue that permit yet. If it's not timely, then that shield does not apply. Let's see. So public participation may be required for some sources. So this would be 30-day public comment and an opportunity for a hearing. So a notice of proposed action would be issued, and then if your new minor source potential to emit exceeds these thresholds in this table, these thresholds are the same for a major modification. They are the same thresholds for best systems of control. So if you exceed these thresholds, then that would require public comment. If you are a new minor source that's going to be located within 1,000 feet of an outer boundary of school, hospital, or residential area, that would also require public notice. If it is a significant permit revision that is required because of significant increase in an existing source's PTE, that's the same threshold in that table. If you are taking a voluntary accepted emissions limit to avoid becoming a major stationary source, including a major source of fugitive emissions, what we call synthetic minor, that also requires public participation. That whole section is .200E3. So let's see. The revisions to an existing permit to operate. So there's a lot more detail in this section of the regulations, so 200F. But the types of revisions that can be made to your permit are a significant permit revision. This is subject to the public participation requirements. Minor permit revision is subject to the permit application requirements we discussed. That's in 200C. An administrative amendment. This can be initiated by either the source or the control officer. So if typos or something needs to be changed that's really nothing to do with like the emissions units, there's a whole list of examples within the reg on what an administrative amendment is. Changes made with notice. So there are certain areas where things can be made with notice, as long as it's within the applicable time frame on the form specified by us. So we'll have a form for this, unless we object with the applicable time frame. So caveat really is there, but I believe it's 15 days prior to that change. And those changes, for example, could be like for like, so replacing boiler A with the exact same boiler B, just boiler A failed for whatever reason. It's exactly the same and letting you know. There are a few other instances where that change can be made with notice. Review that section as well. Reopening for cause. So this shall not be initiated before notice of such intent is provided to the source. So this would be from us, the control officer. We would let the source know that we are reopening it for some reason. But that would be at least 30 days in advance, unless it was an emergency. I can't think of any type of emergency that would require that, but it's in there in case we need it. So major modifications. So any modification to a minor permit that would result in a PTE, essentially making that a major source. So So again, encourage you to review the section of the regulations, contact us early with questions, sign up for the subscribing to our email list. So we're going to have a workshop again, January 16th, 12 to 1. Put it on here. Here's all of our contact information. The workshop slides will be available on our website under the public outreach page. We plan to have workshops essentially monthly. If as you are getting into the regulations, you have ideas or suggestions or something you would like to spend more time on, please send us those ideas so that we can address them and we can cater a workshop around, you know, if we're seeing the same thing come up by several people, we may just have sort of Q&A sessions. This is, I think, new territory for all of us. So anything we can do to help, we are open to suggestions. So please call us, email us. We are here to help. You know, this is a new process and there's a lot to it for everybody. So you're your best resource at this point in time. So until some other folks get more familiar with it, and we've been working on this for 4 years now. So to get to this point. So yeah, so with that, any questions?
We have a question from the chat, and I'm going to see if I can mute them and they can just ask it directly. Hey, Martin, can you use your microphone and ask your question?
Yes, absolutely. So we recently upgraded some of our equipment in late 2023. The renewal date was not until this year, but we had submitted in advance of the equipment installation the new PTE, and then I guess the paperwork must have got lost or something or other. So when we went to renew our permit, they were requesting that, but then found the documentation and everything was cleared. So what I want to ascertain is that we won't need to do anything on our part since that was already approved with the consultant's potential to emit for the new equipment. But I do want to confirm on the new permit we just received, the new requirements for the annual emissions. Since I just submitted it in September, says it's due again this coming March for a new permit.
Okay, so quick answer to the annual emissions due in March. You can ignore that. So that was the last workshop talked about how we're doing like our throughput. You are no longer required to report to us annually. You have to keep records of all of the same things. But you know, we weren't entirely sure how we were rolling that part out. So we put March 31st as a date for everyone. So everyone who got that this year, it said March 31st. But what's happening is, so it's no longer required because every facility will be, the fee will be based on what we're calling allowable. So what we've determined to be, for a lot of facilities, we've looked at historical data and said, okay, because there's categories. So less than 20 tons, 20 to 40 tons, 40 to 60 tons, 60 to 80, and so on. And so whatever category you have historically fallen in, that is what we're basing your fee off of until we know any better. And so it'll just be an automatic fee that's assessed and invoiced to you on the month that you're used to getting that fee assessed and paying that bill. And so that is completely separate. You will, however, still get the reissued permit during that month. The end of that month, we should say, with that new expiration date. So to answer your question about your potential to emit, every 5 years, yes, you will have to do that again.
Okay.
So depending on where you
Alright.
fall in the renewal cycle, if we do have some facilities who have done kind of we have preemptively said, okay, we know this is coming. They've done some major changes and maybe mostly the last year, we've had them submit some pretty significant applications. So on a case by case scenario, if that category, that facility falls into like the first year, we're sort of saying, okay, you just did that. So we'll give you another couple of years before you need to do that again. So that's on a case by case basis of facilities we know have just had a major overhaul with their application.
Okay, great, great. So then just to have the records on site, not to actually submit them by March 31st.
Exactly, yeah.
For the last reporting calendar year, is that correct?
Exactly, yes. So you may
Okay.
be asked by a compliance officer when they come out to do your inspections, so they may ask to see them. And then every couple of years or so, our planning team, they actually kind of manage all the emissions for Washoe County. And so they may pick certain categories that they will reach out and ask for that data from you.
Okay, all right. So just basically to have it ready and on hand, should it be requested if
Yep.
a regulator or an inspector comes on site?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. That totally answers my question. Thank you very much.
Anyone in person have questions?
Another question. Um, on. Go ahead with your question, Q&D construction.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes. So what specific pollutant is it that you guys are monitoring that puts whatever source or site into the 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100?
It depends on the site. So your PM source, Q&D is a particulate matter source, right? Some sources are VOC sources, printing, they're VOC sources. So it depends on whatever your highest pollutant is for your particular source.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions from the virtual attendants? Oh, yes, there is one. Let me see who this is from. Yeah, mute them. Amal, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Thank you. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so my question is more around the best system of control requirements. And I'm wondering, would there be a deep dive session on the implementation of this program? And sort of follow-up question, how that will be implemented is like hypothetically, if I have a synthetic miner source and looking to install new emission units for this site, and that would have project related emissions, but not really changing the current permit limits. So in that situation, would the new source would be subject to the requirements of best system of controls?
If I'm understanding you correctly, you're modifying a existing synthetic miner source. Would that modification, if that modification were to exceed those best system of control thresholds, then yes, best system of control would be applied to those new emission units. Or it could also apply to existing emission units if those emission units are impacted by that modification, i.e., removing a bottleneck or increasing production on the existing emission units based on the change that you're making at your facility. Does that address your question?
It does, but I'm also wondering if there is no change to the limited PTE, then are you looking at the project level emissions in that situation?
based on PTE.
I don't think so, because it would be based on potential to emit and the increase in potential to emit. And if there's not an increase in potential to emit, the VSC would not apply. So would you be referring to a modification where you're removing equipment, adding new equipment?
Yes, exactly. So the net increase is 0.
The net increase is 0. I do believe that the BSC would still apply to those new emission units coming in.
Okay.
Then
That-
again, if there's any existing emission units that are going to remain, and there would be a net increase in production that would be impacted by that modification, the BSC would also apply to those existing emission units.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Well, thanks everyone for coming, and see you again next month.
Just a reminder that this presentation will be posted online. The slide deck will be posted online. And if you have any questions, please visit Our Clean Air or contact us with the information you can see on your screen now. We really want much success in the rollout of these regulations and these programs as possible. And we really rely on you asking us questions and getting clarification to submit timely and complete applications. So thank you everyone for attending.